Live from the iBeacon Experience Days. We're talking about health and beacons. Three men around the table. Who are you and what are you doing?
Well, I'm Sven, co-founder of the Glimmer and Beacons.
What is your relation to the health sector?
It started with Ben. I did my graduation project in eHeath, and it involved creating a new type of sensor. And from that point on, I've continuously worked with or towards solutions that improve or could improve healthcare in the future.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So, and you?
Right. Yeah, my name is Ben Kreuze. I'm professor at Amsterdam University of Applied Science and also at University of Amsterdam. Computer science, and my research focus is to study and to develop systems that can help people to maintain a healthy lifestyle.
You?
Well, I'm Jonathan Carter, co-founder of Glimmer and Beacons. I don't have a formal background in eHeath, but we all met through a project that we were doing before the Beacon, which was to develop an assisted living solution for elderly people living at home. So I do have some experience in it.
Yeah. So maybe we can start with you. Can you say picture the world we're living in and how technology is starting to help us?
Yeah. Well, there's a tendency in healthcare that people are not put in nursing homes anymore, but they have to stay longer at home. You see that, for example, when people having hip surgery. In the old days, they spent 3 weeks in hospital. Now they spend 2 days in the hospital, and then they're sent home. So that means that the domestic environment has to be much more suited for providing healthcare at a distance. And there are a number of projects, so I was asked by a number of health institutes to look at the possibility of computer science to make it possible for people who need care to live independently at home. And there are basically a number of issues. For example, one issue is alarm. So you want to give an alarm if something is happening at home. The other thing is coaching, so there's much more coaching being done via digital methods.
Yeah.
And the projects I really focus on is monitoring the daily activities. So can you monitor whether somebody is still making the breakfast at the regular time, sleeping well, and the other thing is more revalidation. People after hip surgery, can you check from a distance whether they're doing their exercises?
Yeah. And of course, one of the things will be, of course, you don't want to ask people what they are doing, but you want to monitor what they are doing.
Right.
So
yes.
And what sort of technologies help you with that now?
Mm-hmm. So I work in the field now for about 8 years. In the beginning, we had a fixed network of sensors. So we look at, so there are basically 2 types of sensors. One is wearable sensors. People have to wear it on their body. Yeah. And the other one is environment sensors. And especially for alarm, for example, fall detection, I want to use ambient sensors that are mounted in the environment, because many of the fall accidents happen at night, when people go to the bathroom, for example, and they don't put their bracelet or their hanger on before they go to the bathroom. So it's very good to have an intelligent environment that detects whether people have been falling. And in that sense, we use motion sensors, acoustic sensors, visual sensors, cameras, etc., to do that.
Yeah. So how can the beacon technology help with this?
For the beacon technology itself, there are a couple of implementations that could help living longer independently. I think that Bluetooth Low Energy, the technique itself, can be the technology is bigger than only beacons, and I think that the other implementations will actually help healthcare a great deal. For instance, we have a bracelet that can give vibration feedback depending on how hard you're running. So say you run in the Vondelpark here, the same run twice, compares how you did it the last time, and can give feedback, vibration feedback, depending on how you're doing it this run compared to the last one. So it all works through Bluetooth Low Energy. The bracelets are in effect a beacon, so you can also use it to determine the location of the bracelet itself via your phone, etc. Yeah. But the technology that you have an intelligent device, an intelligent phone, for instance, that has access to a lot of information and that can provide feedback directly to your body through vibrations, etc. That will help in what's it called? It will help in letting people live longer independently, so to say.
Yeah. Hey, what sort of a phase are we with the technology? Is it just starting? Is it already a sort of mature thing where we know what it can do and how it can help us?
No, it's very early, I would say. In terms of Bluetooth Low Energy, which is the fundamental principle upon which beacons work, this is quite new. I think it's 3 years? 3 years since Bluetooth Low Energy enabled you to have devices such as, people often have those monitoring devices for their health, even though they're not unhealthy, things like Fitbits and Nike Fuel Bands. And the fundamental change that happened was you have this low energy type of Bluetooth, and so the battery could last for several months, maybe up to a year, instead of the old Bluetooth, which you remember from your earphone that you used to connect to your mobile phone, where you had to charge it up virtually every night. So the big step is that Apple adopted it and they built it into the iPhone, and that was only last year. And so, of course, when you're looking at which technology to start with, Bluetooth or the alternatives, you think, oh, well, it's already built into all the Apples. Most of the early adopters own Apples, and so kind of like the whole market's just sitting there for you. So a lot of choices got made really in the last couple of years to go for the Bluetooth Low Energy, and so now we're in a real beginning phase of a spurt of new tech, wearable tech and health tech, etc.
I was thinking what a lot of this technology does, and technology we have nowadays, and say software, etc. Is it sort of a democratizing software, etc. as well? So in the past, I assume there were a couple of big players that did everything in the health sector, and now you see I think solutions coming from all directions. Yeah, can you tell me something? Have you seen changes in that respect? Is there?
Yes, especially in the fitness field. So you already mentioned it. So the price of the wearable bracelets for monitoring your heart rate and locations is really decreasing. So you see a lot of app developers developing apps using those bracelets and things like that.
Yeah, but when you talk really say about people needing care, etc. I mean, it's not such a problem if my Fitbit is not really correct about the amount of steps I did today. This is sort of the general thing. So that's quite it's quite okay. But I can imagine that when you are looking really into the health sector, you talk about other stuff.
Yeah, but therefore you need a good education also. So what we're doing at the University of Applied Science now is we have set up a program where we have nurses, therapists, but also computer scientists and designers in one class. Yeah, and that the nurse tells the computer scientist, you can measure this at this moment, and if you don't measure it at this moment, it's not a reliable measure. So both sides, both the health side, but also the technology side, they have to learn from each other.
Yeah. So and that's because you see that of course everywhere that you got say themes that are sort of different than they used to be. People from different fields coming together. So that's what you see in your work.
Yes. And then there's still a lot of problems. For example, recently I read a paper that, for example, hospitals and also people at the clinics and physicians are not so very interested in self-reporting of the people. So they say, I do the measurements, I'm expert, and whatever your equipment does. But that will change, I think, because they will see the benefit of the self-measurements.
Yeah, because and of course you've already seen that, say with normal doctors, because people first Google themselves and then go to the doctor and tell them what they have. Yes. So that's so the cult of the amateur, of course, is everywhere, so to say. So you need to. So there's a cultural shift as well, that you need to say that it can help you as well when people do that.
Yeah. And the main bottlenecks in the progress at this moment is, for example, the whole care process, because that's a very rigid process and hard to change. And apart from the process within the care institute is also the financing of care. So many of the doctors, physical therapists, they get reimbursement, they get money for people who come to their clinic or to their physical therapy practice. Yeah. And if they do it at a distance, which may be much more convenient for them and for the people, they don't get reimbursement. No. So. Yeah. Hey,
and when you go back to the, what was it? How do you say it? The low energy Bluetooth? What's it? That's I think I want that technology in all my devices, but that's I always wherever I am, I say solve one problem: batteries. So when you look at it and you say look at it in a broader perspective, but those 2 days here are about, of course, the beacons. What sort of things do you see for yourself and see in the near future work in the health sector when we talk about this?
Well, I think that we will see a lot more devices and also systems built to monitor ourselves. You already see with both Apple and Google, they're both moving towards health platforms integrated into their operating system instead of a separate application on top of it. Yeah. So they really want to put a focus on it. And I think that those systems will provide the basis eventually for remote healthcare, e-health, those kind of systems. And we will see a great increase in the amount of devices that gets created. Also, because Bluetooth Low Energy doesn't require any certification from the developer side, you can very quickly build a device, get it onto the market, and get it compatible with an iPhone or an Android phone. So yeah, it will explode.
And you say I want the environment to give me signals. But what does that mean for my house when I'm getting a little bit older?
Well, it's not only the wearables that communicate with your phone. Yeah. It can also be the other sensors in your home. And that's really a new development. In the old days, we had the sensors in the home and you need a rigid internet access point to transfer the data to your server. But in this case, it's your mobile phone. It's the hub. Yeah? So you're much more flexible. Yeah. Even elderly people who don't have an internet connection in their home, you can very quickly, within 1 day, set up this system. And that is, we're going to use that also for people after hip surgery. Many old people have hip surgery. They don't have internet connection in their home, but you want to connect the environment sensors, and we can use the phone and the hubs with the iBeacons for localization and for activity recognition.
Yeah. Where do you see so what are the things you get most enthusiastic about, you see happening in this field?
The standardization. So standardization is always good, that you can have many other peripheral equipment to one phone. And I think if you do that, you can push a lot of data to the server. At the same time, you get, of course, the different problems, because the accelerometer data can be at one company, the running data can be at another company, and the environment sensors can be at another company. So the question is how to collect those data to get an appropriate idea of the health of the person in the home.
Yeah, and having the data is one thing, but what to do with it is another thing.
That's another thing. Yeah, and that's what we're working at the university.
Yeah, that's what we need universities for. Yeah, and you when you look around, you say this was the reason why we started it. What are the things you get enthusiastic about in this field, in the health sector?
I get enthusiastic in the health sector. I think in the way that some simple things can actually can enable a lot of change. I'll just give you one example. In the London hackathon that I was at, there was an iBeacon hackathon in London prior to this one, arranged by Be Your App. And the winner of that hackathon was actually a set of doctors, junior doctors, and they created a solution with iBeacons where the iBeacon was in the hospital various strategic points. And there were also iBeacons in the taps where the doctors are meant to wash their hands. And so when a doctor would enter one room, the beacon would detect that they're in that room. And then when they would leave the room, if they hadn't had a signal that they'd washed their hands, it would give them a buzz on the phone and say, hey, you need to wash your hands, because there's actually a lot of very serious rules and regulations around it for the spreading of bugs in hospitals. It's a very simple solution that could save lives. And that's, for me, that really is makes me enthusiastic.
Before you, there was Ron, a guy from VideoDoc, and he developed an app for the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra or something like that. But what they wanted is a thing that if you haven't switched off your phone and you enter the concert hall, you get a signal as well. So can you please switch off your phone? That's the same thing. Really valuable and really easy to do, actually. And you said before we started, where do we limit, say, our talk in this? It all feels like at a certain stage, say 20 years ago, the internet was, say, the big thing, and at a certain stage we thought, well, we understand this, and it feels like we're now at a completely new beginning of something where we don't know where it's going.
Yeah, I think this is because because of the beacons, your smartphone has an entire new, what's it called, a sensing modality, because you now have locational awareness, and that locational awareness can change everything. Because before, a phone was quite dumb, right? You just click on things and it will respond with pre-programmed things. But now you can, the content that gets delivered by an app can be completely dynamic based on where you're currently at. For instance, take the app that we've developed for these 2 days. You can get help by scanning who of the organization is next to you, so you can directly ask somebody a question. For instance, that was not possible with systems prior to iBeacons, because how would a phone know indoors where it would be? So, it changes everything.
Hey, we haven't talked about it, and it is a different subject, but you will be talking about, people will talk to you about a lot as well. Of course, it's with all the data, and with all the sensors, the privacy issue, and especially, of course, in the health sector. So what does this mean, all those things for those questions?
So first of all the experiments we're doing with sensors in health projects, they go to the medical ethical committee, so we have approval of the committee. The data, you have to be very careful, and you have to adhere to the standards that are there for security. Also, what I said earlier, one manufacturer may have his data on his own platform, the other manufacturer. And maybe that's not so bad, because then you don't have all the data at one location, and depending on the application, you can draw information from one location or the other location.
And do you see a future where we say the data is mine?
That would be the ideal situation, but then again, people often don't realize what the possibilities are of sensors or what they measure, etc. So, for example, when we started doing the experiments with elderly people, we asked them, do you want to have a sensor network in your home? And they said, what's a sensor network? So what we did is we made a mock-up of their home, a real small version of their home with the sensors in it, and with a small doll they could run through the house, and only at that moment they realized that somebody from outside can monitor you when you are watching television, for example, and what program. And they got a much better idea what sort of information can be collected with sensors.
And did they like that?
Well, for the elderly people, it's a trade-off. So they are very afraid of being found after 2 days in their home while they're lying on the floor. So they say it's a trade-off. I want to give away some of my privacy, but I want to, if that helps me in being found in time, that I want to give that up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see what they come up with those 2 days. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
good. Thank you.